My wife lied about inheriting $500, $0 from her grandmother, but I just found out she secretly sold the family house and split the money with her lawyer. Now she's saying I have no claim to any of it during our bitter divorce. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy to get blindsided like this, but here I am. The craziest part. It all started with a stupid lie about money that turned into something way bigger. I mean, I had no idea my wife, Lisa, was capable of hiding so much from me, until I found out she'd been cheating, lying, and secretly screwing around with her lawyer. Yeah, her lawyer. That's what broke me. We'd been together for over 10 years, married for 6. It was a typical suburban life, 2 kids, a mortgage, the whole American dream. Lisa always acted like she was the sweet, responsible wife, but lately she'd been acting weird. She'd been secretive about her phone, deleting messages, and getting defensive when I asked about her whereabouts. I chalked it up to her being stressed about work, but something felt off. Still, I never suspected anything serious. Not until I stumbled across that email chain. It was late one night. I was in bed scrolling through my phone when I saw a notification pop up, an email from her lawyer confirming a transfer of a hefty sum of money. I froze. My stomach sank. I opened it and saw the details. $250, zero transferred to a private account. I stared at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. It didn't make sense. Why would her lawyer be emailing her about money? I thought maybe it was some legal settlement or inheritance she'd never told me about. But then I remembered her talking about inheriting a small amount from her grandmother. That was the story she'd sold me. I decided to dig deeper. I started snooping through her emails, her bank statements, anything I could find. That's when I discovered the real truth. She'd lied about the inheritance. The $500, $0 she claimed she was supposed to get from her grandmother. She'd already sold the family house. Behind my back, split the money with her lawyer and kept the rest hidden. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. I found receipts showing the house sale, a transfer to her lawyer, and a series of secret meetings. All hush-hush. The worst part, she'd been lying straight to my face, telling me she was saving for the kids' college, that we needed to tighten our belts, that she was just taking care of business. And the timing. It's like she was waiting for the perfect moment to pull this off, right before our divorce. I'd always suspected she wasn't entirely honest about money, but this was next level. She'd been feeding me lies for years, about her family, about her past, about her intentions. But this, selling the family house, splitting the money with her lawyer, and then turning around and telling me I had no claim to any of it now, that was the real kick in the teeth. I confronted her one night. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I showed her the evidence, her emails, receipts, everything. She sat there cold as ice and told me I was overreacting, that I didn't understand the legal system, that I had no right to the money because I wasn't part of her business dealings. She called me paranoid, said I was making a big deal out of nothing, but I knew the truth. She was lying again, trying to spin her way out of it. Her reaction made me furious. I felt betrayed on every level, not just by the fact she was cheating, though that was clear now, but by how she'd lied about the inheritance, about the house, about everything. How she'd used me as a fool while she was secretly planning her escape. It was like I was living with a stranger, someone I barely recognized. I wanted to scream, to yell, to make her see how much she'd hurt me, but I just sat there numb, trying to process what I'd just uncovered. The woman I loved, the woman I married, was out there screwing her lawyer and lying to my face. The emotional toll hit me hard. I felt sick, angry, sad, like I'd lost a part of myself. How could she do this? How could she lie about money, about her family, about everything we'd built? It wasn't just the betrayal of the affair, but the betrayal of trust, of all those years of pretending everything was fine. I'd always been the guy who worked hard, paid the bills, supported her dreams. And now I found out she'd been planning her escape all along, secretly cashing in on her family's past while I was kept in the dark. That realization made me feel stupid, used, and furious. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying everything, trying to find some way to fix it, to understand her motives. But deep down, I knew this was the end of the line. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who'd lied and cheated her way out of everything we had. I swear, when I looked at her that night, I saw a stranger. Someone who'd betrayed me not just with her body, but with her lies, her greed, her total disregard for what we built together. I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't stay in this marriage, not after what I'd uncovered. But part of me still wanted to believe there was some way to salvage what was left. The problem was, I didn't trust her anymore. Not at all, and I definitely didn't trust her lawyer, who I now suspected had been in on this from the start. This wasn't just about money or betrayal, it was about respect and honesty, and that was gone. So here I am, trying to pick up the pieces of what's left. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing. I'm not letting her get away with this. I've got plans, and she's going to regret ever crossing me. I don't care what she says or how she spins it. She lied, she cheated, and now she's going to pay. That's all there is to it. After I confronted Lisa that night, everything changed. The air in the house felt heavier, like the walls themselves were suffocating. She sat across from me, her face calm and unreadable, like she was already planning her next move. She kept insisting I was overreacting, that I didn't understand how the legal system worked, and that I had no right to her money. She called me paranoid, said I was too jealous, too insecure. But I knew better. I could see through her bullshit now. She'd been lying to me for months, maybe years, and I was just waking up to it. I spent the next few days obsessively digging through everything I could find. I wanted to know exactly how much she'd taken, where it all went, and how she'd managed to pull this off without me catching on. Turns out, she'd been secretly meeting with her lawyer, Carla, for months. I found emails where Carla was advising her on how to hide the sale of the house, how to avoid any suspicion, and how to split the money in a way that would leave me out completely. Lisa wasn't just lying about the inheritance. She was actively planning her escape, and I was just the fool who'd been left in the dark. I also discovered that she'd been withdrawing money from our joint account, big sums, under the guise of business expenses. Honestly, I've been too blind to notice. She'd been funneling cash into secret accounts, buying luxury items, and even taking trips without telling me. All the while, she kept telling me she was working late, that she was busy with family stuff. The truth was, she was building her new life, and I was none the wiser. The worst part was realizing that the house sale had been a done deal for months. She sold the family home, our home, without my knowledge or consent. The day I found out, I went to see the realtor's office. I wanted to see the paperwork myself. There it was, a notarized document signed by Lisa, transferring ownership to an anonymous buyer, all handled by Carla. She'd been planning this for a long time, and I was just now catching up. I felt sick. Not just angry, but betrayed on a level I'd never experienced before. I remember sitting on the edge of our bed that night, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. My mind kept racing. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? I thought about her bitchy attitude, how she'd always act like she was the victim if things didn't go her way. She told me she loved her family, that she wanted to protect her inheritance for the kids, but all she cared about was herself. She'd been planning her escape, her new life, while I was clueless. The next day, I decided I had to confront her again, but this time with more evidence. I sat her down, showed her the bank statements, the emails, the receipts. I wanted her to see I knew everything. Her reaction: she shrugged, looked annoyed, and said I was making a big deal out of nothing, that I was being paranoid, that she was just taking care of her future. That's when I snapped. I told her I wasn't going to be played for a fool, that I knew she'd been screwing her lawyer, selling the house, and hiding everything from me. Her face darkened. She snapped back at me, accusing me of being jealous, insecure, and paranoid. She called me crazy for even suggesting she'd do something so despicable. I was furious. I felt the blood rush to my head. How could she call me crazy after all the lies she'd told? I'd always been the one who worked hard, paid the bills, kept our family stable. And now I found out she'd been secretly screwing her lawyer, selling our house, and hiding millions from me. That's when I realized she'd been planning to leave me for months, maybe longer. She'd been using me, using our life to cover her tracks. Honestly, I was devastated. It wasn't just about the money or the house. It was about trust, something she'd completely destroyed. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone who lied and cheated her way out of everything we had. I felt like I'd been living with a stranger all along, someone who could look me in the eye and lie so effortlessly. That realization hit harder than anything else. I was crushed. I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't stay married to someone who lied to me for so long. But part of me still wanted to believe I could fix this, that somehow we could work it out. The problem was I didn't trust her anymore. Not even close. I also suspected her lawyer, Carla, was in on this whole thing from the start. I was furious at the thought of her screwing me over like this, stealing our family's money, and then telling me I had no claim to it. That was the moment I knew I'd have to fight for what's mine, and I'd do whatever it took. So I started planning my next move. I reached out to a lawyer I knew who specialized in divorce and asset division. I wanted to be prepared. I also started gathering every piece of evidence I could, bank statements, emails, receipts, everything that proved Lisa's deception. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I knew she'd try to spin her way out, probably accuse me of being some jealous, insecure husband who couldn't handle her success. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I had all the proof I needed, and I was going to fight for what was fair. Now I sit here trying to figure out how to navigate the chaos she's created. I don't know what's coming next, but I do know one thing: I won't be her fool anymore. I'll take control of this mess, and I'll make sure she regrets ever crossing me. Because if she thought she could cheat her way out of everything, she's got another thing coming. I'm done being played. The truth is out now, and I'm ready to face whatever comes next. After I gathered all the evidence and had my lawyer on speed dial, I started to realize just how deep Lisa's betrayal went. It wasn't just about the money or the house, though those were huge. It was about control, trust, and feeling like I'd been completely duped by the woman I once loved. I decided I had to act fast, not just to protect what was rightfully mine, but to make her pay for the lies, the cheating, and the betrayal. The first step was confronting her again, but this time with a clear plan. I didn't want her to spin her usual bullshit about how I was overreacting or how she was the victim. I needed her to see I knew everything. So I set up a meeting at our house, under the guise of wanting to talk things out. I told her I had some questions about the money, about her business trips, and her sudden interest in the lawyer. She played it cool, as if she had nothing to hide. But I knew better. When she arrived, I laid everything out on the table: screenshots of emails, bank statements, receipts, everything. I watched her face change as she realized I wasn't bluffing. She tried to deny everything at first, but I cut her off. I told her I'd been watching her for months, that I knew she'd been screwing her lawyer, selling the house, and hiding millions from me. Her eyes widened just for a second, then she got defensive, snapping back with those bitchy comments she always threw around. "You don't understand the legal stuff," she spat. "You're just jealous because I don't want to share my inheritance with you. You're insecure and you're trying to control me." That's when I snapped. I told her she was a liar and a cheat, that she'd been planning her escape while pretending to be the perfect wife. I told her I was done being manipulated, and that she'd crossed the line from lying to outright stealing if she thought she could get away with it. She looked at me with that cold, bitchy glare and said she didn't owe me anything, that her money was her own, that she'd earned it, and that I had no claim. I just about lost it. I told her she was full of shit, that she'd lied about her inheritance, sold the house behind my back, and split the money with her lawyer, who, by the way, I now suspected had been in on this from the start. I told her I was going to take everything she stole, that I'd fight her in court, and that she'd regret ever screwing me over like this. Her reaction was classic Lisa. She started crying, not because she was sorry, but because she knew she'd been caught. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was ruining her life, that I was a jealous, insecure husband who couldn't handle her success. She threw a tantrum, screaming that she loved her family, that she was just trying to give her kids a better future. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw through her crocodile tears. She was just desperate to save herself. That confrontation marked the beginning of the real war. I knew I had to act fast, not just to secure my rights, but to make her pay for all the lies she'd told. I started to get serious about the legal process. I contacted a divorce attorney, and we began to prepare for a fight. I wanted to ensure I got my fair share of the assets, especially the money she'd stolen from us. I also knew I'd have to dig into her lawyer, Carla, to see if she was involved in this scheme from the start. I wasn't going to let her get away with stealing from our family. As I took these steps, Lisa's attitude only got worse. She became more manipulative, more bitchy, trying to guilt me into backing down. She told me I was ruining everything, that I was being unreasonable. She accused me of trying to control her, of being jealous of her success. But I knew the truth. I'd caught her lying, cheating, and stealing. There was no way I was letting her walk away with everything she'd taken. The emotional toll was intense. I felt betrayed, furious, and exhausted. Every time I thought about her sneaking around with her lawyer, selling our house, and hiding millions from me, I wanted to scream. I felt like I'd been living a lie for years, and now that I finally knew the truth, I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. But I also knew I had to be strong, that this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about holding her accountable. I started to distance myself emotionally. I didn't want to be angry all the time, but it was hard not to be. Every day, I woke up feeling more betrayed than the last. I kept replaying the moments when she'd lied about her family, about her intentions, about the inheritance. How she'd spun stories to keep me in the dark, all while planning her escape. It was a brutal realization, but I knew I had to stay focused. I had to fight for what was mine and make her understand that betrayal comes with a price. So I kept building my case, lining up witnesses, gathering more evidence. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, and I didn't want her to manipulate her way out of this. I also started to think about the bigger picture. What kind of person does this? How did I miss all the signs? I felt like a fool, but I also knew I was done playing nice. If she thought she could screw me over and walk away, she had another thing coming. I was ready to fight, to take everything she'd stolen, and to make her regret ever messing with me. The more I dug into her schemes, the angrier I got. Lisa was a master manipulator, always had been. She knew exactly how to spin things, how to make herself look innocent even when she was guilty as hell. The thing that really got me was how she'd lied about everything, especially about the inheritance. She told me she was waiting to inherit that money, that it was a family treasure meant to secure our future. Turns out, she'd already sold the family house months ago, split the cash with her lawyer, and was just waiting for the right moment to bolt. I started to realize this wasn't just some impulsive decision she made. No, this was cold, calculated. She'd been planning this entire betrayal for a long time. She kept insisting she was doing it all for the kids, for our future. But that was bullshit. She was doing it for herself, greedy, selfish, and willing to destroy everything we had just to get ahead. It was like she saw me as an obstacle, someone standing in her way of her new life. I decided I had to hit her where it hurt. If she thought she could just walk away with millions, she was dead wrong. I hired a private investigator just to confirm what I already suspected, that she'd been hiding money, assets, and probably more than just the house sale. Sure enough, I found out she opened multiple bank accounts under fake names, funneling money into offshore accounts. She'd been laundering her stolen inheritance, making it nearly impossible to trace. I felt sick knowing she'd gone this far. She'd lied, cheated, and stole from her own family, and now she was trying to gaslight me into thinking I was the crazy one. The day I got the full report from the PI, I knew I had enough to take her to court. But I also knew I had to confront her again, this time with everything laid out on the table. I wanted her to see that I wasn't backing down. I called her at work, told her I needed to talk face to face. She was bitchy on the phone, complaining about how I was ruining her day, how I was overreacting. But I didn't care. I told her to meet me at the house that evening. I had a surprise for her. When she arrived, I was already waiting with a folder of evidence. I threw it on the table and told her I knew everything about the sale, the offshore accounts, the secret meetings with Carla, the withdrawals, the lies. Her face changed. For a second, I saw panic flash across her eyes. Then she got defensive again, trying to dismiss it all, saying I was just jealous, that I was insecure, that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. But I wasn't having it. I snapped back, telling her she was a liar and a thief, that I was sick of her manipulations, her lies, her constant betrayal. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I wanted a full account of every penny she'd taken, and that I was going to fight to get my fair share. I told her I was done being her fool, done being played for the idiot who believed her sob stories about her family and her beautiful future with the kids. She looked furious. She started yelling, calling me a jealous, insecure loser who was trying to control her. She screamed that I was ruining everything, that I'd never understand her ambitions, her need to be free. But I didn't care. I was past caring. I told her she'd crossed a line, that her greed and lies had destroyed everything, that she'd betrayed me, her family, and herself. That night I stayed up late, making calls, drafting legal documents, and preparing for the inevitable. I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail, probably try to spin her version of the story, how I was a controlling asshole who didn't appreciate her success. But I didn't care. I knew the truth now, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had to be relentless. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, crushed, and angry all at once. Every time I thought about her screwing her lawyer, selling the house, and stealing from our future, I wanted to scream. How could I have been so blind? How did I miss all the warning signs? The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who'd lied and cheated her way through our life together. It was a raw, painful realization, but I knew I had no choice but to fight for what was mine. I started to distance myself emotionally. I didn't want to fall into despair, but it was hard. Every day brought new reminders of how badly she'd betrayed me. I kept replaying the moments when she'd lied about her family, her intentions, her loyalty, how she'd spun stories, manipulated everyone, and built her fake world while I was left in the dark. It was a sickening feeling, knowing I'd been played for a fool, but I also knew I had to be strong. I'd come too far to turn back now. So I kept pushing forward, lining up lawyers, gathering evidence, and planning my next moves. I knew she'd try to manipulate her way out of this, but I was prepared. I wanted her to see that her lies had consequences, that I wouldn't be taken for a ride anymore. Because at the end of the day, the biggest lesson I learned, after all this betrayal and deception, is that trust is fragile and people will betray you if they think they can get away with it. And I refuse to be that person who gets played for a fool again. Not anymore. The legal process moved faster than I expected, and I was surprised at how prepared I was to fight back. I had all the evidence laid out, bank statements, emails, receipts, everything that proved Lisa's scheme. My lawyer warned me that Lisa would try to spin her story, that she'd claim I was jealous or insecure, but I was ready. I knew her game now. She'd been lying for so long, it was almost second nature to her. But I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of this. The first court date was a blur. Lisa showed up looking like she had all the confidence in the world, dressed to impress, with her bitchy smirk plastered on her face. She tried to act innocent, like I was just some jealous husband blowing things out of proportion. But I was prepared. I presented everything, her emails, bank statements, the sale documents. I watched her face tighten as she realized I had her dead to rights. Her lawyer tried to object, but I had too much evidence. The judge was straightforward. I explained how Lisa had been secretly selling the family house, splitting the inheritance with her lawyer, and funneling money into offshore accounts. I told the court about her lies, her manipulations, and how she'd been planning her escape for months. I demanded my fair share of the assets, what was legally mine, and asked for an investigation into her offshore accounts. I saw Lisa's bitchy attitude crack just a little when she realized I was serious. She started to panic, throwing tantrums, trying to claim I was just jealous and insecure. The judge wasn't swayed by her tears or her bitchy attitude. He ordered an immediate freeze on her accounts, pending further investigation. He also scheduled a follow-up hearing to determine the division of assets. I felt a rush of relief, knowing I'd taken a big step forward. But I also knew this wasn't over yet. Lisa was the queen of manipulation, and she'd do everything she could to turn the tables. Over the next few weeks, the battle intensified. Lisa's lawyer tried to spin her story in court, claiming I was an unreasonably jealous husband who was just trying to control her success. She argued that she deserved to keep the money because she'd earned it, never mind the fact that she'd lied about inheriting it, sold the house behind my back, and split the cash with her lawyer. I saw right through her act. I knew she was trying to make herself the victim, but I wasn't buying it. Meanwhile, I kept pushing for a full account of her offshore accounts, demanding transparency. I wanted to see exactly how much she'd stolen, where it all went, and how much she still had hidden. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. She'd been laundering money for months, hiding assets and trying to cover her tracks. I was starting to think she'd planned this whole thing for a long time, carefully orchestrating her escape. The emotional toll was massive. I felt betrayed, furious, and exhausted. Every new piece of evidence made me more determined, but also more broken inside. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind. How did I miss all the signs? I'd always thought we were solid, that she loved me. But now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, greedy woman who'd lied her way out of her marriage and her life. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but I knew I had to keep fighting. One night I sat alone in my office, staring at the legal documents, feeling the weight of everything. I thought about the woman I married, how she used to be kind, caring, and honest. That person was gone, replaced by this scheming, bitchy woman who'd betrayed me. At every turn, I felt a mix of sadness and rage. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done. I wanted her to see that you can't just screw over your family and walk away scot-free. I started to focus on what I could control. I contacted financial experts, started planning how to rebuild what she'd stolen. I knew I'd have to start over, but I also knew I wasn't going to let her ruin me completely. I'd fight for my rights, for my dignity, and for my future. I'd be damned if I let her manipulate her way out of this without consequences. The hardest part was watching her try to turn everything around, to make herself look like the victim. She'd cry, scream, and accuse me of being the bad guy. But I saw through her act. I knew she was just trying to save herself. And that's what made me angrier, the fact that she was so willing to destroy everything just to get what she wanted. I realized then that I had to be stronger than her lies, that I had to stand firm, no matter how much she tried to gaslight or manipulate me. Now, I'm just waiting for the next court hearing. I don't know what the final outcome will be, but I do know I've already won the most important battle, seeing her for what she truly is. I've learned a harsh lesson about trust, greed, and betrayal, and I'll never let someone like her do this to me again. I've got my evidence, my lawyer, and a plan. It's only a matter of time before she's held accountable, and I get what's rightfully mine. The final court hearing was a whirlwind. Lisa showed up looking more bitchy and manipulative than ever, trying to play the victim again, crying fake tears and making herself out to be some oppressed wife. She spun her usual story about how I was jealous and insecure, how she was only trying to secure her future for the kids, and how I was ruining her life. But I sat there, calm and collected, knowing I had everything on my side. When the judge finally spoke, he laid out his findings. He ordered Lisa to return the money she'd stolen from the sale of the house, and he ordered an in-depth investigation into her offshore accounts. He also awarded me a significant portion of the assets, more than enough to start fresh and to finally put this nightmare behind me. Lisa looked furious, but there was nothing she could do. Her lawyer tried to argue, but the judge was firm. She lied, cheated, and stolen, and she was going to pay the price. After the court session, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. All the anger, betrayal, and heartbreak didn't just disappear overnight, but I knew I'd done everything I could to fight for what was rightfully mine. I'd uncovered her lies, proven her deception, and held her accountable in front of the law. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity and integrity. In the days that followed, Lisa's world started to crumble. Her lawyer dropped her. Her offshore accounts were frozen, and she faced a mountain of legal bills she couldn't run from. She tried to contact me, begging for forgiveness, claiming she was sorry, that she'd made a mistake. But I didn't fall for it. I saw her for what she really was, a woman driven by greed and selfishness who'd betrayed her own family. The divorce was finalized a few weeks later. I moved out of the house into a smaller apartment and started building my new life. It wasn't easy. There were nights filled with anger and regret, moments when I questioned everything. But ultimately, I knew I was better off without her. I learned that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild, especially when it's been shattered by lies and betrayal on this scale. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown from this experience. I learned to trust my instincts, to pay attention to the signs, and to never let myself be blindsided again. I also learned that some people, especially those who are greedy and manipulative, will do anything to get ahead even if it destroys everything they once claimed to love. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, I'll say this: don't ignore the signs. Trust your gut. Protect yourself and your assets. And don't be afraid to fight for what's right, no matter how ugly it gets. Because at the end of the day, standing up for yourself is the bravest thing you can do. I've lost a lot, but I've gained clarity. I've learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you who you really are. I'll never forget what happened, but I will move forward, stronger and wiser. And I hope that anyone else facing a similar betrayal finds the courage to do the same.